everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into recent DeepSeek situation that's been making waves and noise in the AI world. Joining me is Rob, the CEO of CharmIQ, to give us his expert perspective on what's happening, what it means for the industry. Rob, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Angeline, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course. So Rob, for those who might be catching up, can you summarize what happened with the recent and current DeepSeek shakeup and news?
Sure, absolutely. This has been one heck of an interesting roller coaster that's been going on. So I would say, I don't even remember how long ago now, a couple of weeks ago, probably in AI timelines. I hesitate to mention a Chinese company because I don't want to turn this into a political discussion, but a company released a product. And along with that, they gave some stats on how much they spent to train it and how long it took in these things. And it's a reasoning model, which are some of the ones that everyone's talking about now on Google and OpenAI and so forth. And they came out with an open source reasoning model. And that led to a whole bunch of a hullabaloo. So I would say that's the net. It had a lot of interesting impact on the market, lots of buzz and things like that.
Yeah, so you mentioned impact on the market. Beyond the market disruption, what other concerns that emerged from this like single incident that happened that kind of shook everything?
There's two ways to look at that, which is what was everyone's reaction to it and how should we think about it, and then what actually happened and what should we think about it. So in terms of the reaction, and this is interesting, and this also has a bit of a political take to it, but what's interesting is we're going through a very visible and public Manhattan Project right now, which is really fascinating when you think about it, because when the original Manhattan Project was going on, no one, including like people even that were working on the project, did not know that they were working on the project, which is fascinating. So what would it mean if you could tweet and live stream the Manhattan Project as it happened? Like, what does that even mean? So how do you take something that's not only do folks not really typically have a view into how does research occur and what steps mean and what does it mean when you have a breakthrough and what is a breakthrough? Like just generally, most people don't have that context. And now we're literally live streaming this thing, this creation of AI to the world. And what does that mean? So it's interesting. Again, we as people have no context. Second is that it's coming at us at a million miles an hour. Third is that it's affecting like the stock market and things like that. It's like, so there's that whole side of it. Like, what does that mean and what should you do and how should you think about it?
Right.
And then there's like the what happened. And what's interesting is the what happened is the least interesting thing of what's going on here. Again, models are produced all the time.
Mhm.
Why would a release of a model in the middle of a week, sometime in the middle of January, when there's releases of models happening almost on a daily basis? Why is this one interesting? Why did it get the news? Why did all that happen? Sure, there was an upstart that created a model that was supposedly on par with all the other models. But given how we benchmark these things, given all these other things, it's hard to know, is it better? Is it good? Is it bad? You have to
Mhm.
use it in your particular use cases. And again, in terms of like, what does it mean that the market reacted so drastically to this? And all I
Mhm.
would say there is, and I'll be just brutally, honestly me here, which is you have to be loud to be heard in today's very loud social media news world. So everyone's trying to be louder than the next person.
Yes.
So how do you make this, how do you make something that's ostensibly uninteresting, how do you make it loud and interesting? Well, you can politically charge it, you can do all these things. So what I would say is all of it was applied in this particular situation.
In terms of the immediate concern, what was the like short, medium, and long-term effects of this kind of noise that's going on?
You asked what's the short, medium, and long term of this.
Yeah.
The short term is honestly nothing. When you actually use the model, you go, yeah, great, it's yet another model. We get almost on a daily basis these days. As somebody who integrates and plays with all these models, it is almost impossible to keep up. So on the
Mhm.
short term, nothing. On the midterm, I think we are so, like I said, if you're when it's noisy, you have to be noisier. So when you're in an
Right.
extremely loud room and somebody's saying something interesting on one side, you're not going to hear it because there's just so much going on. So I think the midterm is effectively lost. which is
Mm,
we're not going to get short-term lessons learned out of this. We're not going to get all these things because we're on to already the next thing. We're already talking about the deep research or whatever the heck it's called that just came out from OpenAI, which is a
oh, right,
copy of the exact same named thing from Google from a couple of months back.
right.
Um, so that's the midterm. And then what's the long term on this? Again, I would say absolutely nothing other than the fact that it's just simply pointing to the fact that this is going to become a common occurrence. And simply by limiting people in terms of anything, um, that it's not going to matter. Like this ball is rolling down the hill and it's picking up speed and it's going to make a hell of a snowman at the bottom. What I would hope would come out of the backside of this is that we would learn from the situation. But again, given the fact that this one was so charged on so many different dimensions, I'll admit I don't think there's going to be a lesson learned out of the backside of this thing because we're already on the next news cycle. So
Right.
I don't think anyone's absorbed that. So that's just one particular aspect of this. The other one is about um, can the current incumbents in this space, the OpenAI, Anthropics, Googles, et cetera, can they be matched, met, and exceeded? And
Hmm.
what's one of the interesting things that I would say is everyone and their brother, basically early last year, early 2024, kind of went underground. So anyone who was anyone that had a bit of time and money decided that they were going to go try for a moonshot. Because if there is a time and a place for a moonshot, it's right now. So what's interesting is we're about, call it 12 months into that. It usually takes 18 months for a moonshot to happen. So my expectation is that within the next, call it 6 months, we're going to see a lot of these moonshots starting to come to light. So the one that I always pick is a canonical name for myself to use, especially given my personal history, is I always look at John Carmack. John Carmack was the lead developer at id Software, which if you've ever been through the Wolfenstein, Quake, Doom craze, he was, if there was a single person on the planet that moved and caused GPUs to exist, it was literally that man. And
Mm,
he had been working at Meta recently with the VR and stuff over there, and he basically said, "Hey, it looks like AI is the right way to go. I'm going to leave all this and I'm going to try for my own moonshot." And he did that very publicly. And I just want to use that as a canonical example of the fact that you had brilliant people that are seeing that this is the next place and they're going after it in their own way.
mm.
And again, I think that all of these are going to come to light very quickly. So, how does this tie back into like what's the point with DeepSeek and what are the issues and so forth? Again, I would say, given the politically charged aspect of it, given how fast it shot out, people talked about it. People in a hair salon that I was at the other day were talking about it. It's like, why do these random people talking about this thing that it doesn't really matter? They don't even know how to contextualize it or think about it. But again, the point of that all is like this is the new norm. So we're going to constantly now, again, because we're within that 18-month cycle, we're going to see all of these new things starting to come out, along with all of the industry people as well are going to start to get pushed because of that. So, and what's even worse is as the models get more capable, the models help you build more capable models. So the old standing on the shoulders of giants analogy comes in here, or parable, I guess.
So what's your advice to someone like myself or, someone that is paying attention to the news, getting news from all different angles? Like, how do you get that non-biased opinion? How do you collectively have those conversations? What are the best tools we should be using for that? Right.
So every time you hear super loud news, you should be looking for what's not being yelled at right now, because there's always things happening. So like, why is this one being yelled? Why is this one so loud? And again, I just think that due to again the politicalness of it, the fact that there's this question about how much money is being spent on AI right now, and is it useful, and is that money going to be able to be recouped? And like then we just had this $500 billion allocation by the government to build these data centers. Like, should we not be
Mhm.
doing that? Like, there's all these reasons why this should be a hot topic, but the individual pieces are what we should be talking about, not like the one piece.
Right.
Um,
So it's basically a symptomatic symptom of a larger shift in the AI landscape.
well, I don't know about a shift. What I would say is that it's simply highlighting the fact that there's a lot of unknowns right now.
Right.
And again, going back to my Manhattan Project analogy, when Fermi was pulling out the rods from the first pile and he had the first sustained chain reaction, like if that was live stream, like imagine what people would be saying. Like there'd be a lot of people like freaking out because scientists were at the time saying like, oh my God, this you may create like a black hole and it may suck us all in, or it may vaporize like whatever. And so you just don't know, and again, including the parties that are participating in these things. So, I always try to look at that lens. Like, can we separate ourselves from the now and like look at the bits and like, is it useful? And again, the interesting part is that, there wasn't really a shift, there wasn't anything. It's just all of the pieces. Do they make sense? Is it amounting to something? Does it mean something? So like, let's look at the open source angle. Let's look at the expenditure angle. Let's look at the sanctions that we put on other countries. Let's talk about each of those pillars without the drama, without the emotion. Let's talk about them. And that should be the news. But again, in order to be loud enough to be heard, you unfortunately have to make things really loud these days.
Yeah, so it's what you've kind of talked about and described is pretty like disruptive, right? These little things come in and they make waves and they go away. Do they mean something? Do they not? Like, how do businesses navigate this kind of storm that brews and comes our
Yes.
way? Like, how should businesses be
Yes.
navigating all of this?
So what's interesting is I would say the biggest problem is again, given the loud room that we're in, how do you make sense of anything that's going on right now, right?
Right.
So in this case, we were talking about particularly language models, but you have video models, you have audio models, you have image models, you have robotics, you have quantum computing. The latest thing, a couple of really interesting papers and companies just bloomed up around the photomics. So light-based processors.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of things we can talk about by using light rather than electrons to power processors. And what does that mean? I would have actually thought, in my personal opinion, given the latest and greatest of what's going on, the talk about photonics would be a much larger thing that would have disrupted the marketplace. You should have seen a dip in Nvidia's stock and TSM, like all of these people. That's what a thing that you should have started to see. But of course, like nobody knows what's going on, right? So it's
Right.
hard to like which is the thing that we should care about. So your
Yeah.
question is like, well, what do you do? And my point is like there's all of these different angles that are happening right now simultaneously. And the only thing that you can do as a business, and I would say almost as a human being in the modern world, which is turn down the volume, turn it down a lot. Um, because if there's one thing our our internal systems do is when you're under constant stress and strain and you're being bombarded with good news and bad news and all of this stuff, you have to really turn down the noise because you get desensitized to it or it starts to cause physical effects. So my advice is turn down the noise. Find your one or two sources of
Mhm.
excellent news. For example, TLDR AI is actually a fantastic source. Get on their newsletter. It comes every morning. If all you knew was from the TLDR AI, you are in really good shape with respect to just knowing enough about what's going on. But given the fact that that comes out daily, and given the
Mhm.
fact that there's 8 to 10 new things, completely new things that come out every single day, you have the surface, the superficial look at it, which is just like be aware of the things that are happening, like what's being talked about. And then on the second level is you have to pick one or two things that you just care about. Are they the right things? I can't possibly tell you. You can't possibly tell you. But you
Mhm.
have to pick something to spend a little bit of time on. That can be either on your personal side, your business side, your work side, whatever. You have to pick something to just not get lost. So if I can give you a takeaway is if you haven't started starting yet, you do need to start starting. This is going to be a rapidly evolving market, and I would say is not to sound like a doomer here, but if you haven't already started, it may be too late because it is moving that fast.
Right.
I don't want to make it seem like hope is lost. So do start,
Do
don't
start.
not start, but
Right.
you
Right.
do need to start becoming aware.
Yes.
And so what I would like to encourage is it really doesn't matter how, again, how you become aware, but you need to spend a chunk of your day making whatever it is as part of your workflow.
Right.
And this is where I will do a slight pitch here, which is
Yeah.
we at CharmIQ specifically built a product I, I built for myself so that I had an opportunity to play with all of the latest language models in an environment in which I have all of the things that I need.
Right.
So I specifically, um, I'll just contrast us against ChatGPT for a quick moment.
Hmm.
Whereas ChatGPT is a tool, just like Notebook LM, just like Claude, just like AI Studio, just like all of the other 100 tools that exist out there. And the problem with a tool, if I may channel my inner Alton Brown, is you don't want your monotaskers. You always want multitaskers because a monotasker is just that. You spend a bunch of time and money on a thing and it only does one thing.
Right.
And
Right.
so you really want a multitasker. And that's what I desperately need myself personally in order to stay on top of all of this. So I personally built CharmIQ so that I, I always call it the anything tool. I will admit my marketing teams hate when I call it that because it's hard to sell a thing that does anything. But to
Right.
me personally, it's an anything tool because I want to be able to go and I want to be able to do whatever it is that I need to do today. I need to spend time thinking about even this problem. How do I talk to people about it? I need an environment, a safe environment in which I can go in and I can ask dumb questions. And by having one of Charm's key features is this notion of charms, this notion of being able to create skills or personas that are embodied in LLMs that I can then bounce my ideas off of. And I need to be able to bounce that off of many different ideas, many differing viewpoints, many differing skill levels and ideas, so that I get the input that I need to start making sense of these things. And
Yeah.
this is how I spend my day is if there is some latest and greatest news, I go into Charm, I talk to my internet researcher, and I say, what the heck's going on? Goes
Right.
out, does its internet research, brings me back some information. Then I go to my personal charms, the one that I use for everything. I have ones that think about psychology. I have ones that think about developmental learning. I have ones that think about marketplace and um, things like workplace and like how do you get adoption and I basically run it through all of those so that I can see all of their differing perspectives, and that gives
Hmm.
me an idea then about how in the world should I think about these things. And that's how I keep up to date on these things. So
Right. I
sorry,
think, yeah.
long-winded answer, but I think
Yeah,
I covered a
no,
bunch.
no. And I'm glad that you talked about CharmIQ. And, I think during these times and even starting to start, it sounds like, thought leadership is really important as technology itself right now is ever changing. So for the leaders out there that are listening, how can they kind of utilize either a CharmIQ or this kind of technology to really help themselves and their businesses and their employees in this ever-changing world?
Yeah, that's a great question. What's interesting is I have some friends that specifically work in the space of basically that, right? They're the people that help you think about things. They're the ones that spend their entire day looking at tools and products and so forth so that they can make recommendations for
Hmm.
other people. They have no vested interest in any of the technologies and they then help that. And it when I've really thought about that, I'm like, you do need to somewhat outsource this stuff today. You need a trusted confidant to do that. Obviously we at CharmIQ really try to do that by doing videos such as this to do outreach as much as we can. But and as I mentioned, like looking at some of the newsletters and things like TLDR AI, you just need to find a way to have a little bit of a stream coming to you every day and helping you think about how you change your work and your environment and your employees' work on a daily basis. Because again, if you're not starting to start now, even if you don't know what it is, like you have to start starting. It's just like when you learn how to cook. The first thing you do is not make a souffle, right? The first thing you do is you actually go to knife skill classes, right? Because the thing you end up doing the most as a cook is you end up chopping a lot. If you've ever made a soup or a stew or anything else, you spend 99% of your time chopping.
Yep.
So as much as you want to learn how to cook, your first thing to do is to learn how to cut things with knives and learn how to
Right.
use knives efficiently. And it's
Right.
weird, but this is the exact same thing in this context, which is at some point you will need to use all of this stuff and the technology will be evolved enough such that you can tactically use it within your workplace. But my recommendation today is you have to basically learn the knife skills equivalent
Hmm.
in the workforce today using AI. And again, not to turn this into a pitch for CharmIQ, but again, personally, that's what I use to do this. I go in and I use all my charms on a daily basis again, and I evolve them as I go so that they can help me learn my new knife skills for the day.
Right. And I think one thing that you mentioned is really interesting is like these charms and this platform, like the context is key. And the way that you learn may be different than the way I learn, right? So it's
That
not
is
like
a
that.
wonderful point. Yes.
Yeah.
Just remember, this is not a one size fits all for all of this stuff. Everyone learns in a different way. And if there's one super positive aspect of these large language models, is that they're very adaptable to every learning style, every approach, every whatever, because they've seen it all in the training data. So, especially as some of these models not only get multimodal in, but are starting to have multimodal out, you're going to have all of the things that you need, the visual, the audio, etc.
Yeah.
And again, the only way to get going with all that stuff is just to get going.
Yeah, I think what do they say? You don't have to be great to start. You have to start to be great. And it
Yes.
even in this world in this ever-changing landscape, I think probably 90% of the people watching this video and listening to us talk today probably use ChatGPT, right? And that's a chat box. You go, you ask it a question, it gives you an answer. So how is CharmIQ a little bit different than the stuff that people are kind of already doing today, getting in there and chatting with the chatbot?
Sure, great. Another great question. The two quick answers on this. The problem with chatbots is that they're very linear. And if there's one thing, as you've hopefully noticed in this conversation, is they're not linear. You end up dumping all over the place, going up and down and so forth. And to do that in a chat is really, really a struggle.
Mm.
Sure, things like OpenAI have released Canvas and things like that, but it's still really trying to force you into a chat perspective. And we at CharmIQ specifically, I give people an open workspace, and you do whatever, and you could do it in whatever order. If you didn't like what the LLM came back with, you can change it. You can move it around. You can copy. You can paste it. And the second one is, again, we're building a platform, not a tool. If there's one thing that I've learned is, dealing with swivel chair tools, going from Claude to copy it to Notebook LM to copy it to OpenAI to copy it back to,
Uh,
whatever. That's a pain. Like you need one place. And that's how, again, I personally do it is I build up all of this context that I have from all of the different things that I do. And I can bring that information into every conversation that I have. I can bring in an old conversation. I can bring in old ideas that I've had through reference material. I can then present them to my charms, and then they can use them as needed. Or if I find they don't work, bring in other ones or make new ones.
Right. No, it sounds so interesting and a great like you said, it has all the tools in one place, so you don't have to jump from tool to tool. So I love that. It's like being in the kitchen. You have your knives, your blender, your stove, your food processor.
All in one kitchen.
Yeah, that's great. So before we go, if you could share with us one anecdote from maybe one of your CharmIQ users, like a leader that uses Charm, what do they use it for and the impact it's
Sure.
had?
Sure. My favorite use case here, the one that really nobody ever thinks of, and this one's applicable so far across the board, is we work with CEOs of small companies. And the most challenging position anyone can be in is a non-technical founder in a technical organization. Um, and that's very common, but it's actually very hard to deal with as a leader because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So what we've had, the back and forth we've had with some of our CEOs is that they actually create personas, they create charms that are their direct reports. And then before they go into a meeting, before they go into their next, or even before their next email, they'll bounce those ideas off of their proxies for their direct reports. And they get the comfort and they get to ask the dumb questions, which of course there's never dumb questions, but you don't ever want to seem like you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
And I personally use this in the case with my attorneys. As everyone knows, attorney fees are extremely high. So every time before I have a call with my attorneys, I will go in and I will work with my charms. And I, of course, have my attorney's charm and I have my all the people that I have, my finance controller, and like all of these different charms that I have specifically for CharmIQ. And I will ask all of my initial questions that I would normally ask on the phone to my attorney, which chews up time and so forth. And I have found that I am so much better prepared. I am so much more informed, and I'm more likely to speak their language, because one of the biggest problems, as you know, with working with your attorney is, you know, your company and what you do, they know law and know what that means. And there's just this gap in between that something has to bridge, and you don't know if you didn't present the right information, and they don't know what to ask. So again, if you have this conversation beforehand, you can surface these things. And even if
Mhm.
you don't understand it, are the things you can ask of your attorney. So rather than burning the time on the call asking the first question, you're already on the second or the third or the fourth, already down the line. For the last engagement I actually had with my attorneys, we were working on some new agreements, and I was able to go on the internet, get a whole bunch of different agreements that I had liked. I brought them together. I used my charms to basically help me synthesize what are the bits that I was confused about, what I liked, what I didn't like. And then that was my conversation with my attorneys. I walked in and I had like these 5 bullets. It was like bam, bam, bam. Like, these are the things I don't know. And my conversation went what normally would have been many hours, thousands of dollars, was
Yeah.
basically reduced to about a 15-minute call, and we got it done.
Nice.
And again, I bring this to your CEO, that if you're looking to have more efficient meetings, like, everyone should have their pre-meeting with their reports before they get
Right.
in that meeting. What's interesting to just say this, because I tend to not talk about the agentic space today in AI, because I think it's an overloaded term that's not really well defined yet. But
Mhm.
if you can imagine a world in which you have things that go out and perform tasks on your behalf, um, that's where everyone sees this going. But notice, in everything that I've been talking about, in nowhere did I delegate something to an agent to go do something. I'm using
Yes.
this for my thinking, for my understanding, for my process, so that when I then do go delegate that task, then I know it's the right task.
Right.
So think of that attorney example that I just gave you. Like, I don't just give my questions to my attorney bot and like let it go do things. Like,
Right.
that's a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
What I do is I sit there with these agents and these charms, and I think about what it is that I need to know. How do I do it? How do I approach it? And reduce that down to a much smaller set. And then once I have that, then I can start to delegate those tasks. So again, where I think everyone's really missing it with AI is they're waiting for this agentic thing to happen. They're waiting for the super useful assistant. But like, I would again almost say it's too late by then. Like, you need to start learning how to think with these tools now.
And we don't
And
want to the human aspect of working with these machines is still so important and relevant. In my opinion, it's made me a better, stronger, faster version of myself. And I don't want to lose that. I
right.
I use, the AI assistants, but it's only to make me more productive, smarter, and better. And sometimes
Yes,
even starting new side hustles that I had no any information about, I'm able to like get 4 years of education in a week.
very
Right?
quickly. Yes.
Yeah. So I think
Yes.
the human element is so, so important to all
Yes.
of the.
If there's advice that I would give today, it's focus on you right now.
Yes.
Focus on your learning, on your skills, and allow the tools to help you with those skills.
Yeah, often I get asked, when I do seminars and talks about AI, well, Shalene, I'm really concerned because I don't want AI is going to take my job. I said, well, kind of. What's going to happen is the person utilizing these tools and utilizing AI will
Yeah.
take your job because they
Yes.
can do it better, stronger, and faster than you. So,
Yes.
like, if you're not using AI today, start today.
Yes.
Even CharmIQ has free access. But invest in yourself. I think your starting package is $39. That's less than a lunch today.
Yes.
So invest in yourself. It's never too late to start using AI, if you want to be more productive and get up to speed faster. So Rob,
It's
thank you so much for your time. This has been excellent advice, excellent insight. I can't wait to speak to you again, hopefully very soon, on another topic that will heat up probably tomorrow or as we speak. So thanks, Rob.
Thank you so much, Shalene. It's
I'll see
been
you soon.
amazing.
And thanks everyone for watching. Bye-bye.